Hey, well, welcome to Digital Detox, a pathway to mental clarity and connection for social workers, parents, and children. This is a presentation, a digital detox course by Red Lotus Life, an online course for better understanding of digital detox support. So this is the third, I almost said first, third of an 11-part series as of right now at the time of recording. There's a chance that it could be longer than that. So if you are somebody who is catching this like as a one-off course and a one-off lesson, just know that there is an entire program that we have developed here for you. So just want to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way. There is a speaker box that is on this presentation. Depending on what device and what platform that you are watching this on, more than likely, like it's going to move around, but more than likely it's going to be in the top right corner. If you are seeing it over the text, please know that there's only, I think, 2 slides here that it might be over the text. But just know that you're still able to make out what the text says, and everything will be okay. That it's going to be just fine. We would check that a little bit just to make sure that everything will be just fine. Okay, so welcome to Digital Detox. We're in the 3rd lesson, and this one is all about what is self-trust? Sarah Elizabeth?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
self-trust. Okay. Yeah, we've been doing a lot of preparing for this, and we're super excited to bring it to you. One of the reasons why we decided to do a digital detox program is because, the current times, we are seeing what is happening with the current times, our modern day age, especially with digital devices. Just even since we started this program and started to actually do the research to create this program, so much has even evolved with AI and all kinds of different things. We've got a lot going on. So what we've noticed as we started to create this was the constant use of digital devices. We have screens literally everywhere. They are in almost every room within our homes. They are in our hands with all of our different devices like tablets and phones and you name it, computers, also at school, at work. We are just constantly, it doesn't matter, they're in the restaurants. It really does not matter. They are almost everywhere that we go. And what it is causing is distraction, a lot of distraction. It's also causing feelings of isolation, definitely overstimulation, and yes, unregulated nervous systems. As you all know, if you are here, you know this. So this is for especially for those of you who are on the front lines. We've been talking to a lot of different social workers and those of you who are in the mental and health field. Also, behavioral health schools. There's a lot of you who are professionals that have been talking to us and sharing with us the state of depletion that you are in because your workload has definitely amped up because of all of this. So this course is for you. Not only is it for parents and children, but we specifically made it for social workers themselves and those of you who are in professionals that are in this field. So, what we've been hearing from all of you is that your clients and our clients as well, we're seeing this as well with the work that we do, that the people that we are working with are operating in a sympathetic nervous state and they are 100% in survival mode. And so with the pressure of the current times and everything that we are moving through as a society and humanity on a global and international level, we are really noticing how the behaviors have intensified. So we're seeing that in our own practices as well as hearing it from all of you. So we thought, you know what? Let's see what we can do here and see what we can do to help, because sometimes we have a different way of doing things than what you may have learned already. So welcome.
Welcome, welcome.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Welcome. about this online course. In this course, we will focus on how to support social workers, parents, and children break digital overwhelm and restore balance. We assume that all of you who are taking this course are to some extent knowledgeable in the area of digital devices, the overwhelm that they can create, and intend to expand upon that knowledge base. You will learn self-awareness, boundaries, and mindful tech use to improve focus, well-being, and relationships. You will gain practical tools to support healthy digital habits at home, in schools, and in communities. So this is myself, Lori Kinsey, and Sarah Elizabeth. This was on a trip down here in southern Utah. This is where I live, and she came out to visit me. She's over in Kentucky right now at the time of this recording. And so, yeah, welcome, welcome. Anyone's always welcome to come and visit. Okay, so today's team. All right, so I am Lori Kinsey. I'm an advanced spiral practitioner. I specialize in domestic violence, abuse, and human trafficking. It's amazing the work that we do as spiral practitioners, and we just really can't wait to share that more with you in other courses and programs. And this is Sarah Elizabeth Hoffman. She's a certified spiral practitioner, and she specializes in inner child work, embodiment, and nonviolent communication, which is what we'll be talking about a lot here in this course. So in this lesson, super excited. And then together we have Red Lotus Life. We co-create Red Lotus Life. Red Lotus Life is an amazing community of students alike around the world. We do all kinds of different things in this community. But mostly what we do is we bring resources and tools to those that we work with, which are inspirational leaders around the world, but also those who are, they're just making great change in the world around genocide and femicide and all kinds of things. We have a beautiful, beautiful community there. So we invite you to come check that out if you would ever like to, or send us a message or something if you would. Okay, so moving along. Okay, Sarah Elizabeth, what do you have for us?
Okay, so I just want to start with a warm welcome. Welcome everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone for joining us. And today we're just going to begin with going over the online course objectives. And these are the overarching objectives for the entire course. And again, it is an 11-part series at this time. So today, as we're diving into the objectives, we're going to first talk about gaining a better understanding of the impact of digital consumption. So here, it's crucial to recognize how our interactions with technology affect our mental clarity, our self-discipline, and our overall well-being. So by becoming aware of these impacts, we can now make more informed choices about our digital habits. So the next objective is to define our practical strategies that will help you set your boundaries. This is about improving our self-awareness and fostering meaningful connections, both online and offline. And it's not just about reducing our screen time, it's about making that time more meaningful. And lastly, we are going to discuss the actionable steps for taking inventory of your digital habits. Implementing self-care and maintaining accountability are vital in the digital detox process. And we want to remember, it's not just about cutting back, it's truly about creating a healthier relationship with technology. So I'm just going to go back over these objectives really quickly. So 1, we want to gain a better understanding. 2, we're going to define the practical strategies. And 3, we're going to state the actionable steps. So now let's move forward and explore how we can actually take ownership of our digital habits. So here we're going to be focusing on trust in self and inner guidance, boundaries, and communication. So we're diving into an essential aspect of our digital detox journey, which is trust in self. So this section emphasizes the importance of building self-trust. When we trust ourselves, we create a solid foundation for personal growth. This not only enriches our own lives, but it also enhances our relationships with others. Whether we're social workers, parents, teachers, or simply engaging with our peers. Next, we're going to discuss establishing healthy boundaries. Boundaries are vital in maintaining our mental clarity and self-discipline, especially in our digital interactions. They help us protect our well-being and create healthier connections with those around us. And lastly, we'll practice nonviolent communication. This approach empowers us to express our thoughts and feelings without judgment, promoting a deeper understanding and connection. We want to remember that effective communication is a key player in our digital detox process. And as we move forward, let's just reflect on how these skills can transform not just our own lives, but the lives of those that we interact with. So again, trust in self, inner guidance, boundaries, and communication. So this section is going to focus on building our self-trust, establishing healthy boundaries, and practicing nonviolent communication. These skills will support personal growth and enhance our relationships while empowering social workers, parents, and children. And just moving on to the next slide, unless you have anything you'd like to add, Lori.
No, I just think okay, I just have to say this part is that I think a lot of people are like, well, what does trusting in self have to do with digital detox, right? But it's such an important piece here. So we're excited to dive into this with all of you.
Yeah, so now we're just going to discuss the objectives for this particular section of the course, which is trust in self and inner guidance. So first, let's explore how self-trust enhances personal growth. When we trust ourselves, we open the door to authentic decision-making and resilience. This trust is foundational in navigating our digital lives. Next, we'll describe the techniques for setting and maintaining our boundaries. This is crucial, again, especially in our tech-saturated world. Healthy boundaries help us preserve our mental clarity and our well-being. And finally, we will list the nonviolent communication strategies to strengthen our connections. And remembering that effective communication can strengthen our relationships, making it easier to express our needs without guilt. And that's going to be a really big point here. So these skills are not just theoretical. They empower us as social workers, parents, and as individuals. So let's get ready to explore how building self-trust can truly transform our well-being throughout the digital detox process. So again, just going back over this slide, we're going to explain how self-trust enhances our personal growth. We're going to describe the techniques for setting and maintaining our boundaries, and then we're going to list the nonviolent communication strategies to foster our connection. And just moving on. So here on the next slide, we're just going to reflect upon a quote that we loved by Jonathan Haidt from the book, The Anxious Generation. We are physical embodied creatures who evolved to use our hands, our facial expressions, and our head movements as communication channels, responding in real time to the similar movements of our partners. Gen Z is learning to pick emojis instead. So this really highlights the importance of our innate communication skills. And yet, in today's digital age, especially we're finding for Gen Z, the reliance on emojis can sometimes overshadow the richness of face-to-face interactions. So we're finding that this shift prompts us to think about the importance of genuine connection. So as we move forward, exploring how self-trust plays a pivotal role in our relationships, consider how our ability to communicate effectively relies heavily on our confidence and understanding of ourselves. So if we're thinking about it, if we struggle with self-trust, how can we articulate our needs or set boundaries without actually feeling guilty? So as we transition into the next section, let's just keep in mind the importance of trusting ourselves. This is not just about personal growth, it's about encouraging healthier connections with others. I'd love to hear, Lori, what you have to share.
Oh my gosh. This quote, honestly, this book was so eye-opening. But this quote here around Gen Z and learning to pick emojis instead of really learning how to communicate with body language, right? Like body language is this whole different language that I think all of us take for granted. And so I love this part about where he says that we are physical embodied creatures and we use our hands and face and, our head movements and everything, responding in real time to similar movements of our partners. So that's one of the biggest things that we noticed as we were creating this course is when we were in observation and researching and all kinds of things. That is the one thing we noticed over and over and over again. And the pandemic and everything, and the lockdowns and everything else that all of us, the quarantine that all of us experienced, did not do our children any favors, right? By wearing masks and all of that, because we still have, at the time of this recording, we still have a lot of people who actually that is now how they move through the world, right? And so whenever we see this with the digital devices, yeah, like how many times do all of us go, yep, heart emoji, prayer emoji, crying face emoji, but we're not really, yes, we all understand what those symbols mean and all that. That's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is this communication with body language, and it's actually becoming a lost ability of expression. And it's really starting to, we're noticing this now. We've had digital devices over the course of time now that we can actually see the effects of this. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that if you have some.
Yeah, I think what it really boils down to, in addition to body language, is emotional intelligence, because we need to be able to read the body language of others so that we can gauge how to respond. And when we are, something that I have seen actually is that when we're using emojis, it's actually a way to not have to communicate. We're not expressing how we're feeling. It may or may not actually be true. And especially when you don't have the context of in-person communication, there's no real way to gauge what the actual sentiment is.
True, because you don't even hear the tone, right? You don't hear the
Mhm.
tone, you don't see the expression, you don't see any of that. And I actually see there's kids out there that are so robotic, right? And on autopilot that they don't, or they go into, like, they dissociate when they are in conflict or in a situation where there are intense emotions that
Mhm.
you see the dissociation happen immediately. So I mean, and then you see the fight, flight, freeze, fawn state come into, like, that just comes right into play. So yeah, I'm really excited that we're talking about this because, again, I think a lot of people, whenever they're what is communication and self-trust have to do with digital detox? Well, I feel like it's such a foundational piece.
It's an incredibly foundational piece in that if we are talking about the fact that we are here to model a certain behavior and that we would like to see certain shifts occur, then we have to be able to trust ourselves first to be able to make those changes, to be the role model. We have to be able to say, okay, if I expect my child, or if the teacher expects the children in the classroom, or the social worker to, to their client, if they expect the children to follow through with the guidelines around digital devices, then we have to trust ourselves to be able to do the same. And that's really the foundation of the entire concept here.
And just to go a layer deeper with that self-trust, I mean, honestly, until we know ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have the trust within ourselves. And we can sit there and say, oh yeah, I trust myself all day, every day. But no, until you fully know yourself and you're grounded and anchored in who you are and your beliefs and have a very strong belief system, whatever that belief system is,
Mm-hmm.
we can't communicate. We don't have really a place of authentic communication because we don't really know what our desires and everything else are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is really cool because if you haven't seen the earlier courses that we've already done in this series, we invite you to go check those out because we do start to really talk about self-love and self-care and how important that is in our lives, which I mean, we're all conditioned that that's not important and selfish and all kinds of stuff. But honestly, it's when we are taking the time to dedicate self-care and create space for that, that is when we start to cultivate that love for ourselves, which is where we actually start to really understand ourselves. And we start to become really clear in our beliefs and really clear in who we are. And then now we can show up in the world with that strong spine and open heart, just like what you were saying. Like we are the models, right? We're the models for the generations that are coming after us, or even our children, right? For the parents out there, it's our children that we are being these models for. And so when we can show up with that strong spine, but also that open heart, that's when everything changes. That's when we become safe spaces
Mm-hmm.
for our children and well, all of our loved ones, I mean, this is when we become safe spaces, honestly. And then this is when we can now start to communicate in a way that is effective and loving and nourishing versus destructive or critical in a destructive way. So really, I'm so excited to be doing this one.
Yeah, so it's really about creating, again, it is about safety. It is about creating the foundation of trust. And also when we're modeling our following our own inner guidance, and when we're modeling trusting ourselves, that gives permission for our children and others around us to do the same. And if we can just move on to the next slide. So here now we're going to discuss actually building the self-trust. So have you ever found it challenging to set boundaries without feeling guilty? Or perhaps you feel uncertain about how to communicate your needs effectively. This is why we're diving into the concept of building self-trust, which is a critical element that can truly empower you to take charge of your own well-being. So self-trust is not just a buzzword here. It's about recognizing your own worth, your own boundaries, and your capabilities. And by cultivating self-trust, you will find that you are better equipped to establish your strong boundaries that protect your mental and emotional health. So this journey really begins with acknowledging your feelings and your needs. And sometimes we can find that hard. There's so much unconscious conditioning that comes with those things alone. And we need to know that it's okay to prioritize our well-being. So as we're moving forward, we will explore why trusting yourself is so important and move into the fact that trusting yourself not only builds confidence, but it also brings us clarity to our decision-making processes. So we'll be continuing this conversation as we uncover a few practical strategies to strengthen your self-trust. But first, I'm going to go again over the concepts on this slide and then invite Lori to share what is alive for her. So building self-trust. Have you struggled to set boundaries without guilt? Really think about that. Do you feel unsure about communicating your needs effectively? And then just the point that building self-trust can empower you to take charge of your own well-being. What do you have to share here?
I love this part, this first one about this question. Have you struggled to set boundaries without guilt? Because to me, this is the definition of people pleasing. I mean, this was me. This was me as a parent. This was me as a partner. I mean, just this was me. This was me in life. I spoke about in the very beginning in the introduction that, I specialize in domestic violence and abuse and trafficking, and it's because I have personal experience with that, right? I am a survivor of that. And that with this part right here about have you struggled to set boundaries without guilt, this is, I feel like if you are somebody who who struggles with this like I did, it unconsciously it relate or what it was the word I'm trying to say here, it's more of this equals out to there's no self-trust. Because I didn't trust myself. So I just went along with what everybody was saying. But I didn't know I didn't trust myself. So I was never in control of my own life. And so if I was never in control because I just wanted to, I just went along with what everybody else said and kind of just, I thought I was easy, right? Like I'm just easy. I'm just chill. I'm easygoing. Yeah, I'm going to go with the, in these directions. And also if you are in a situation where there is violence or abuse or something like that, again, like how do you do that, right? How do you do that? So this part about the boundaries to me is a huge reflection for anyone, or invite anyone to really ask yourself this question and then ask yourself, well, do I have that self-trust? Because when we were creating this and I reflected, yeah, I didn't have it. I didn't have the trust in self, but I didn't know I didn't have it. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. And that's exactly what I was going to follow up with here is you don't know what you don't know until you do. And again, it comes back to bringing the unconscious patterns into the awareness. We can't really change and shift and create the change that we're desiring to see until we are conscious of the fact that, yes, I'm a people pleaser. I don't trust myself. I mean, it shows up in so many different areas and aspects of our lives. So this isn't, we are talking digital detox here, but really take inventory of where we are not trusting our inner guidance and we're not trusting self.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also because we are talking digital detox, check into where are you people pleasing because of what you're seeing on and what you're consuming with like social media and things like that, because again, that's unconscious. So just really noticing what you notice about that. The second part here, I love this question. Do you feel unsure about communicating your needs effectively? I mean, honestly, it comes back to that clarity of mind. Like you have to know yourself again, right? You have to know yourself again. And I like how you talked about like your desires and the type of life that you'd like to create, because you don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. And how can you communicate it? So really it's asking along with this question, I'd like to invite people to say is what do you want? Like becoming clear, what is it that you want? So asking yourself, what do I want? And then this last part about building self-trust can empower you to take charge of your well-being. I mean, only you can protect and prioritize your own well-being. Like, it is your responsibility. And we talked a lot about that in the previous course in lesson 2 about accountability. But really, I mean, we're conditioned to, and I was right there, conditioned to think that it was really up to everybody else to have my well-being in mind. But really, I mean, it is only up to us. We are the only ones. And yes, there's nuances here. We understand that. We get that. We'll be talking about that quite a bit throughout this lesson. But in the end, it does come back to you, regardless. Yeah. And that's a more advanced course that we could talk about that if anyone's interested. We're happy to do that. But in the end, it really does come back to you.
Yeah, I think that that's the perfect way to move forward on that note. Okay, so here, why trusting yourself matters. So as we're diving into the significance of trusting yourself, let's consider how this relates to our everyday lives and our digital habits. So trusting yourself is paramount. It not only builds your confidence, but also brings clarity to your decision-making process. So a couple of things to consider would be, firstly, when you trust yourself, you empower your choices. This confidence radiates into how you establish your boundaries, which is an important factor to protecting your mental and emotional health. And we're sort of reiterating these things purposely over and over and over again. Secondly, practicing nonviolent communication is going to be key. This approach not only builds respectful relationships, but it also allows you to express your needs without fear or guilt. So trusting yourself is not just about self-belief, it's about creating a healthier relationship with yourself and with others. So again, why trusting yourself matters. Trusting yourself builds confidence and clarity in your decision-making process. It establishes boundaries. Establishing boundaries protects your mental and emotional health. And then practicing nonviolent communication is going to foster respectful relationships. Where are you with this process?
This is so important. And yes, it might feel as if we are repeating ourselves, but there's a reason why. And this part about trusting yourself builds confidence and clarity in decision making. It is when, the muddy waters, right? The muddy waters are always when we haven't made that decision. There's so many different options, there's so many things that we want to do, whatever. But it is when we actually make that decision is when all of a sudden we have that clarity. And it really is then taking the next step after that decision. It now builds the confidence. And the reason why all of a sudden the waters are clear. And if you think about it, like just think about any time in your life when you're like, oh man, there was so much, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. But the second that you make a decision on, oh, this is what I want to do, and then you actually do it, now we have the regulated nervous system that now is like, okay, that builds the confidence that now creates the trust in self. So we wanted to really bring this out because it is so foundational, but it's so unconscious that not a lot of people understand that process. And it really is that mental mind that we're getting on board, but the mental mind can't get on board until a decision is made. So this is amazing. Did you have anything to add to this before I go on to the next one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so the next one about establishing the boundaries. You're the only person that's going to know where you are. So again, it's getting that clarity, right? Like getting that clarity on where am I? Where am I frustrated? Where you're the only person. So if we're talking to parents and we're talking about digital detox, you're the only one that knows your family. You're the only one that knows your habits, your digital habits and all of that. And so it's really getting clear on what boundaries need to even be put in place because this is where the nuance stuff comes in. It's not going to be one process or whatever fits all because you are the only one. So it's gaining clarity again. And when you gain that clarity, this is where the trust in self comes into play. Okay. Because this will be very customized to you, your family, your family's habits. Did you have anything for this one before I move on? Okay, so then this other part about practicing the nonviolent communication. I mean, this is so big in digital detox because we know that you're going to get the pushback, you're going to get the resistance. I mean, we've experienced this. We do not ask anyone to do this without us doing it first. And it really does start in the very beginning. It's just like any other detox, which is what we talked about in the previous lesson. So you can go and take a look at that. But your bodies will go through the exact same thing that it would go through if you were detoxing off sugar or any other substance in your body. It's going to be those dopamine hits. And so you're going to get that. We bring in the nonviolent communication because I know whenever I am irritable, I'm snappy, I'm this, I'm that. And so if we have this nonviolent communication in our awareness, it does foster respectful relationships because now we are teaching others how to treat us. So if we are just coming out sideways and we're just snapping at people all over the place and things like that, I mean, you're probably going to get it back. But also now you're going to just know this, you're going to get it from your family too. You're going to get it from your kids. You're going to get it from everyone, your partners, everybody who is doing this with you. And so even if you are the only person who is taking this course and you have this in your awareness, you're going to be able to navigate that pushback as you move through this detox program.
Yeah, it's really all about planting the seed because we aren't going to be, or any one of us that is in this process aren't going to be able to just implement it on day one and everybody's going to fall in line and it's all going to be perfect. It is a process. And so I guess just a reminder to be gentle with yourselves and with those around you as well.
Mm-hmm. The good news is that it doesn't take very long. I mean, it does take a long, but it doesn't at the same time. That first initial thing that I just talked about. I mean, we were able to move through it in my household in about 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how long you were able to move through it, but
I mean, I was able to move through it pretty quickly, but also we are used to implementing these types of guidelines within our own personal processes and within our own lives. And I just want to say too that it helps to have everybody in the household on board, but also, just like Lori was just sharing, it can just be one person. It can just be one person who is really actively taking all of these steps. Well, okay, let me take that back. When I say one person, I mean one parent. So if it's a parent-child dynamic, then at least one parent who's completely on board in this process. It still works. It still creates change.
it does. Yes. Again, it's that modeling, right? Modeling the behavior does ripple out into the household.
Mm-hmm. So just moving on to the next slide here. We are going to be talking strategies for building self-trust next. So here we have some practical strategies for building self-trust. First, we want to practice self-awareness. A really good way to do this is by journaling your thoughts and feelings. It is a really, really powerful tool. It allows you to reflect on your experience and understand your emotional landscape in a better way. And then secondly, we just want to affirm the ability to make choices that honor your own well-being. Affirmation not only boosts your confidence, but it also reinforces your commitment to self. And then lastly, we want to reflect upon our past successes. Take a moment to consider those times when you made decisions that positively affected your life. This strengthens your confidence and reminds you of your capacity to trust yourself. And this is really, really important because there's so many times when not only are we not celebrated, but we're not celebrating others, and we're definitely not celebrating ourselves. So I'd love to hear from you on this, Lori.
So anybody who knows us, and if you've been taking any of our courses and programs, you know that like how we feel about journaling. And so I love this part because I was not somebody who journaled. I wasn't. There was a lot of reasons behind that. Part of my experience was if I journaled anything, like as a child, if I journaled, my siblings would get a hold of my most private thoughts, right? And then it was out there for the world to see. But then moving into abusive relationships, the same thing. Like there was no way. I experienced extreme abuse in my relationships. And one of the things that he would do, and I'm saying this for all the social workers out there, just to have this in your awareness, if you do have any clients or those that you're working with who are experiencing that, if you do talk about journaling as part of a strategy for this, one of the things he would do is he would like I would have a notebook and then he would go over it and shade it. And then he would actually be able to see everything that was written on that notebook, even if nothing was there. And so he would do that. And then he would use those things against me. So just have that in your awareness as if you are working with anyone that's in these types of relationships when you are talking journaling. But here we're talking about journaling for, well, yeah, I'm going to go a little deeper into this. I was like, maybe we won't. But yeah, because here we are talking about really being authentic. If you saw the first couple of lessons that we built up to this one so far, we do talk about authenticity. We do talk about vulnerability and everything else, and being accountable with ourselves. And we can't be accountable unless we're slowing down that process. Like it is a total process whenever you journal. And so what happened for me whenever I would journal, because I finally did it. I finally thought, okay, I'm in a healthy relationship now. Things are private. There are boundaries in place. They are honored. And so I do journal a ton. I mean, it is one of my go-tos, especially if I don't trust myself. If I don't have confidence that I'm going to make the right decision, I will start to journal. And what happens when we slow down that process, now we get to actually process our thoughts and our feelings, and we get to the root cause of, well, what is actually happening here? And when it comes to digital detox, one of the things that I noticed that really brought me clarity, I couldn't figure out why I I would get annoyed. I would get annoyed if I was talking to my partner, my husband, if I was talking to him and then all of a sudden he like breaks out the phone and all of a sudden he's watching videos or something like that. And I did a journaling session on it. And when I did the journaling session, that's when I realized that it just made me feel as if I wasn't important. When I finally got through all the muck and all the gunk and all the thoughts and all the feelings and everything, the root of that was I didn't matter because his attention was somewhere else. And then what happened was I was able to then communicate that to him. So that's why it's relevant here. I was able to communicate that to him. And then from there, he was able to make some changes. And then also vice versa, because that's also a mirror of me, right? If I can see that in others, I'm seeing that in myself. So then I started to realize, oh, this is how I felt. And so I really make it a point to put my phone away whenever I'm in a conversation with somebody. And to be honest with you, I don't even have a lot of the notifications on or anything for my phone. I mean, the important ones, yes, but not the others because it was constantly distracting me. And I didn't even understand that until I did this journaling process. And then I got really in touch and clear on my own thoughts and feelings. And then I was able to communicate that to him. And then now there's been a shift, which has been really good. So when we journal, we actually neutralize a lot of the emotions that are like intense or like, the things that are stirring things up, I guess. Do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, so what it basically does is it helps to neutralize our emotional triggers. When we're writing down our processes and our thoughts, and we're getting clear around what our triggers are, what emotions are present for us, as Lori was sharing, we're getting to the root. Now, not only are we clear on what we're feeling and how we're being triggered, but now we have come back to a place of neutrality, and we can now communicate and express our needs. And this is really important because, so many times if we attempt to have a conversation in the heat of the moment when emotions are high, then that's when everything does come out sideways. And when we have journaled and we've processed and thought about how we want to present and how we want to communicate, then we can communicate with clarity, and we're received in a much different way.
Which then creates the confidence, right? And when we're
Yeah.
received in a desirable way, in that way, right, of being heard, now we have the trust in ourselves that we made the right decision, right? So that
Yeah.
kind of gets me to the next part here, is affirming your ability to make choices that honor your well-being. I mean, again, it's making that like the next right decision and then taking the next inspired action. So with the example that I gave, I journaled my thoughts and feelings. I came to clarity on what it exactly I wanted to communicate. So now, okay, now I'm going to communicate the decision made. I'm going to communicate that with my husband. Okay, the next step is telling him I want to communicate with him, like, hey, when do you have time today? There's something I just want to talk to you about, or whatever, right? And then now this goes into the confidence, right? The confidence
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, okay, so that did change, like that created a change, a shift that is strengthening our relationship and our communication with each other. So now I have that, okay, I made the right decision. Instead of just letting it go and letting it spin out, and every time it happens, getting more and more irritated and everything else, because then, just like what you said, that's when it comes out sideways. That's when things build up and it blows up.
Yeah, and a really good way to help prevent that in the moment is to remember to come back to the body, come back to the breath. Just take a couple of deep breaths in order to begin to regulate your nervous system and slow down and think about how you would like to respond rather than it coming out as a reaction.
100%. Okay. And then I really wanted to, I love this reflect. I love this part, the reflect on past successes, because
Mhm.
that is so important. And you're right. That is something that we just don't do, right? We don't celebrate ourselves. We don't celebrate each other. But I really, with this being, how I specialize in the abuse, this is when gaslighting can really happen. And it's the gaslighting by others, but not only by others, but ourselves, right? When do we minimize our past successes? I feel like most, right? Most people actually minimize when we're conditioned to think that we need to be humble and we need to remember
Mhm.
where it came from, and, tall poppy syndrome and just all that kind of stuff. And it's like, no, those are important. That's important for your well-being. It's important for your confidence and your self-esteem. It is an imprint within your life that strengthens this confidence. So, yes, this is huge. Reflect on your past successes because, yeah, you did those things. You did it. And you can do this too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that celebrating one another, celebrating self, celebrating our accomplishments is so important given the fact that it creates the imprint. And then we have that to come back to. We remember that imprint and the way that it feels, the way that it feels in the body. And then we can come back to saying, yes, I can, this is an affirmation that that I did honor my well-being. And this is an affirmation that I can trust myself when we are celebrating our wins.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
You go ahead.
I was just going to go ahead and move forward. So if you have something else you'd like to add, then
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I mean, this kind of comes back to that highlight reel, and I can't remember. This is what I was going to ask you. Did we do it in one or two? Did we do it in the previous lessons, or was that in one of our other programs where we talked about the highlight reel that Ed Milet speaks about?
I think that was in a previous.
Was it another? Oh, a previous one for this?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. All right.
I can't remember.
Then let's talk about it because this is so important. This has to do with creating those new neural pathways. And that's exactly what we're doing here when we are detoxing. It's even from digital detox. We are creating a new way of being. We are creating these new neural pathways. And this Ed Milet speaks about this, about the highlight reel. And to be honest with you, I think it's actually Tony Robbins who originally started talking about this. But that is how you start to build and create, especially if you're from a place of ground zero. And let's just say the bottom has dropped out, right? And you're just like, where do I go from here? But you can actually use this at every single point in your life, every single time you're wanting to like push that boulder a little bit higher up the hill. It's doing that highlight reel of all of your past successes because that does imprint. It creates a different state of chemical. And I wish I knew the words right now. I wasn't planning on bringing this in right here, but it creates a different chemical state within your body. And that changes everything when it comes to confidence and self-trust. So yeah, pick out, this is a great strategy for this, is to go and pick out those highlight moments in your life, kind of go and do this like timeline of your life and remember how you felt during those times. Because yes, you can do this. You can do this. You can detox from digital devices. You can.
I love this. So just moving on to setting and maintaining boundaries. So when we're talking about setting and maintaining those boundaries, we're going to take a moment to reflect on why setting and maintaining boundaries is imperative for our well-being. So number one, it's important to clearly identify your limits. This means understanding what you need in order to feel safe and respected. Understanding what you need in order to feel safe. And number two, once you've identified those limits, we want to communicate them effectively and confidently. Remembering that you deserve to express your needs without hesitation and without fear. And number three, we want to avoid feeling guilty. We want to avoid feeling guilty when asserting your needs. It's not selfish to prioritize your well-being. It's essential. And so by doing these three things, you're not just protecting yourself, but also continuing to build healthier relationships with others. So here, I just want to go back over these points about setting and maintaining our boundaries. We want to clearly identify your limits and communicate them confidently. We want to stay consistent to build respect and understanding. And then we want to avoid feeling guilty when asserting our needs. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Lori.
This understanding, right? Clearly identify your limits and communicate them confidently. I mean, this is where we begin to understand our needs, right? This is where we observe our triggers or what activates annoyance or anything like that. This is where we start to really see where our habits are and all of those things, right? And we start to see our family's habits as well. So this is very, very important, this part right here. And this right, it gives you a chance to just observe.
Mhm.
Do you have anything to add that one before I go into the next?
Only that when we're in a state of observation, we can really learn so much. And this really does bring us clarity so that we are able to identify our limits and then communicate them.
Yeah. Yeah. I like this when we're in a state of the observer. This is also where we're just kind of taking note. Like we're just taking note of and just noticing what we notice. We say that quite a bit with the work that we do because this is where get the understanding instead of the snapping or something like that, right? Snapping or things, emotions coming out sideways. So it's just taking note and then going and doing a journaling session on it. Works out pretty great.
Mhm.
The second part about staying consistent to build respect and understanding. I mean, consistency again shows others how to treat you. We're going to probably really hammer that in on the consistency because we get it. We understand there's nuances. And people are like, no, it's not black and white. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is. You know, it is that black and white. And when you are consistent, that is when they start to respect. And so when we're talking digital detox, when you are consistent with boundaries around no phones at the dinner table, pretty soon, I mean, it does take a little bit of time. You're going to get that pushback. We're going to continue to keep talking about that. But pretty soon, your kids are going to be telling their friends, yeah, you got to put your phone in the basket here, and then we can go have pizza. You know, like they're going to start to realize and understand that this is just how it is. So I don't know. What do you have to share about that?
Well, to begin with, consistency builds trust and safety. When we are consistent, then they can trust that we not only mean what we say, but we're saying what we mean. Um, and that also, again, takes us back to, are we being the example?
I have
When,
a, oh, go ahead.
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I have a very small example that doesn't necessarily apply to digital detox, but it applies to just boundaries. And I mean, I am half Japanese, and so I just barely instilled, and we just barely bought a new home. And so I instilled the whole no shoes in the house in this one and because I really wanted it to be like that. And it was interesting because at first, a lot of people didn't know it, right? They didn't know. They'd been to my house a million times. They didn't realize that I wanted them to take their shoes off. And now, only, of course, over a few months, now everybody knows, take your shoes off. Like everybody knows, they're telling their kids, they're telling their friends, anybody new, oh, you got to take your shoes off. And then not only that, but it's gone a step further, and people actually bring like their house shoes to my house now because now they know what to expect. And it's been really cool to even see that happen with my kids. My kids have been doing that as well. So, I mean, it does take a little bit here, but consistency over time is going to create momentum.
Hmm?
Did you have anything else with that one before I move into the last one?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so honestly, this is feeling guilty. This was me. I was the classic people pleaser, and I 100% felt guilty when I asserted my needs. So, this one right here, what I've discovered as I've gone through my healing process is that this really is the ultimate act of self-love, is whenever you do avoid feeling guilty, because that is an inner feeling that we create ourselves. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Elizabeth, because this is like so your jam.
Yeah, so the first thing that I'd like to bring to the conversation is the fact that um, feeling guilty is a very unconscious, it's coming from a place of unconscious conditioning. So sometimes we might not even know why we're feeling guilty. It might be an experience that we had that makes us feel like whatever the experience we're having now, it makes us feel guilty. And so every single time we have an experience, that guilt comes up and we might not know where it's coming from, but also we can start to ask ourselves the question, why am I actually feeling guilty? And again, it comes back to finding that root cause. If I'm feeling guilty, do I really have a reason to feel guilty? Is it my guilt? Is this something that I've learned from, say, a parent or from society or from any given place? That, we come into contact with so many different personalities throughout our lives, but so many times the guilt is not our own. And so I think that it's really important to ask yourself those questions so that you're able to express your needs without feeling guilt.
Yeah, you just nailed it. And we do talk about it a little bit in the previous lesson on accountability. We do go deeper into all of that. So this is huge. And just remembering again, why are we doing this, right? Why are we doing this as a family? What is it that we want on the other side of this? And that is connection. That is more time together. That is, you know, doing the things that we love together. And also opening up more time. I mean, there's so many benefits whenever we start to detox from our devices.
So many
Mhm. Self-trust most definitely being one of them.
in
Okay.
every aspect.
Yeah. Are we ready to move on?
Yes, we are ready to move on. So now we're moving on to how we can actually practice the nonviolent communication, which ties beautifully into our boundary setting journey. So, nonviolent communication. So, we're going to take a look at this concept of practicing nonviolent communication. Let's focus on how it can transform our interactions. So if we break it down into a few simple steps, which I love to just break it down because this concept in and of itself, we could do an entire presentation, probably several presentations on just nonviolent communication. So I wanted to make it really, really easy because not only are we wanting to understand this, or we would like for parents to understand this concept, but we also want children to be able to understand it. So these are really simple ways to break it down. So it can take some time to adjust, and it does take practice. So the first step that we want to take a look at is to know that that it is essential to observe without judgment. So this means focusing on the facts of the situation rather than allowing our emotions and our opinions to cloud our perspective. So when we do this, we actually create a clearer pathway to understanding and communication. So the second step is that we must express our feelings openly. So we're going to share how situations impact us, and how that's not only brave, but also it deepens our connections. Again, it's going to deepen our connections. So we're remembering this is about being honest without blaming or guilt tripping others. It's about being honest without blame. The third step is that we need to clearly identify our needs. And we've talked about different ways that we can do that. And shortly, I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of how we can do that using words. Step 4 is all about making the request. So here, making the request is about clearly stating what we desire, but without making the demands. This approach then paves the way for supportive and respectful communication. And again, it definitely takes practice, and embracing nonviolent communication can significantly enhance our relationships and our personal well-being. So here, I'm just going to share a short script and an example of each of these points where we can observe without judgment, express our feelings openly, identify our needs, and then make requests. So an example of observing without judgment, we can say something like, I've noticed that when we are eating dinner or driving somewhere, you are always on your phone or tablet. So the next thing that we want to do is to express our feelings openly. So we can say something like, I feel, and again, it's important to express the emotion. I feel a little sad and disconnected when that happens. The third thing we want to do is to identify our needs. And we can do that by saying, that's because I really need and value connecting with you. And I love to hear about your day. Being present with you means a lot to me. And then when we're making a request, we can say something like, would you be willing to take a break from screens during meals and car rides so we can talk and connect? Can we work on this together? So this is just an example of how a parent might talk to a child, but we can insert different language and adjust it no matter who we're talking to, and just use different language, right? So it might even be, I feel disconnected. I feel isolated. I feel like I'm not being paid attention to, like different things that we've already sort of talked about here. And this is just a really easy way to observe, express, identify, and then make requests. And what are your thoughts, Lori?
I love it. I think that's so cool. I love that you just brought that in because, I mean, just walking through these steps, because that is the one thing, like, right? Observing without judgment is hard.
Yeah.
That is hard. And a lot of times we have to be careful with this one because this is when the seed of blame can be planted. That's kind of when the seed of the thought of blame. So I love that you brought it back to, like, I feel, using I statements, right? Because
Mhm.
that is the one thing, whenever we start to do the you statements, then that can start to take the conversation into a different direction. So love, love, love that one. I love this part about expressing the feelings openly because this is when we can be vulnerable. There's a lot of times that, especially as with parent and child relationships, a lot of times the child comes to the parent, but the parent doesn't really come to the child about a lot of things, right? Where it's like vulnerable in your feelings and being authentic about that. You do want to know about their day or something like that. And say it from a way of vulnerability and authenticity, because again, that changes everything. Like when we approach in that way, that creates the trust and that safe space again, right? Instead of being like, I've noticed, da da da, and you're just on your thing. It's like, no, like coming from that strong spine, that open heart. This is where the open heart comes in of like, I would like to know about your day. I want to know, whatever. Well, you said it perfectly. So it creates that trust, which then establishes that deeper connection that we're all longing for with our loved ones. That identifying the needs. Yeah, this one is a really great one too, because a lot of times people will bring up the problem and the issue, but then they don't really clarify the needs, and it's usually because people don't know their needs, right? This is why we talked about it earlier in this lesson, is that really getting clear on your needs so now you can communicate that. And that doesn't mean ultimatums, and that doesn't mean manipulation. That's truly being just authentic in what it is that you are desiring. And then this last one about making requests, yes, huge, Sarah, huge, with talking, like bringing the solution and then asking the other person if they're available for that. Because sometimes, like, I know that happens a lot, like with me, whenever I was parenting, there was a lot of times I wasn't making requests, I was
Right.
demanding things. And I was saying, this is how it's going to be, which then it didn't, what I did was I shut the door on any kind of creative solutions that actually I could have learned from my children. So I love that part about even honoring of somebody else, regardless of their age, if they are available for that, if that's something that would work well for them.
Yeah, actually, in my experience, you would be surprised what a child will tell you that they are not available for. And then again, there's some creativity that comes with that in helping to shape their own awareness. Um, Something that I've noticed is that when I am talking to my child and I actually give him some space, then that really helps. So, like, we want them to win, right? We don't want to set them up for failure. So, even just an example that I have is time has been a really big one. And so I might give him some leeway and say, hey, we have to leave the house in 1 hour. And so he knows already that we have a time limit. We have to leave in 1 hour. And then I might come back a little bit later and remind him, hey, we need to leave the house in 30 minutes. And what this does is it gives them the capability to actually take action on their own. They're taking their own responsibility. And then they know that, like, hey, if I'm not ready, there actually is going to be a consequence. And I knew that it was coming. So you're giving them a lot of freedom to actually make the right choice, make the right decision. Same thing with devices. Something that I do with my son is to, have the conversation about presence. We have the conversation about connection, and then we have the conversation around the time limits on the devices. And he knows, like, one of the things is that we work from home, right? And so he knows from a very young age that there's a boundary around my time in the office. And he's very, very respectful of that. And he's known that from day one. Um, and so when I clearly ask him, but it's in a respectful way. Mom is going to be on a call from this time to this time. Can you please keep your voice down because we're going to be filming? It's just things like that. And thinking about how would we as adults want to be talked to? And that's kind of the way that I approach a lot of the boundary settings and a lot of the conversations, and always coming back to, can we work on this together?
Yeah, I love that. And I've witnessed it. I mean, you and I have been working together for years. And so I've witnessed this from him at a very young age, and him being able to respect that and honor that. And it's been amazing. And also it's that respect, right? Again, whenever we are talking to each other, we're communicating to each other, regardless of the age, it's coming with respect first, because that also instills those traits within our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we are communicating with them in a nonviolent way and we're communicating them where we are holding them in a place of respect, then they will respect us back and they will also respect others.
Now, again, there's these nuances, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's these nuances
yes.
that happen. So we get it. We get it. We understand. But whenever you're able to do that first, And then to also come back to it too. I mean, because I have very emotional children. So like, and they had strong, I mean, I raised them to be strong and independent. And so I would get the pushback. So I would start with that and then get the pushback, and then I'd have to have that strong spine, and then, but then that open heart, and then ending with that if we were able to, and always coming back to ending with that, even if that's taking space, just like what you said, right? Taking space from the conversation, but coming back and ending with it, and then also bringing back in like their desires, right? The desires. Oh, well, you want like, well, we talked about this in the other courses already, the previous ones, but it's getting them to connect back into why are we doing this? What is it that we want? Keeping that goal in mind, right? Do you ever, so again, this is without that, going back to them, no ultimatums, no manipulation. It's truly just now communicating, but also remembering that they have that will as well. They get the choices. Yes, there's consequences to some of their choices. Which consequence do they want? The one that they want? You know, I love this. We could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
So here we have another quote. So as we're taking a moment to reflect on this powerful quote by Jay Shetty, he says the words, "When you learn to navigate your inner world, the distractions of the outer world lose their power." And this again is Jay Shetty from the book Think Like a Monk. So this speaks to the heart of our journey in practicing our boundary setting and our nonviolent communication. In that, in our busy lives, distractions can often derail us from recognizing what we truly need. And so by navigating our inner world, we can empower ourselves to reclaim focus and clarity. So a first point here is that recognizing boundaries is essential to clearly identify our limits. This clarity allows us to communicate our needs with confidence. A second key here is that consistency is key. So when we stay consistent in our boundary setting, we are cultivating respect from others, which is vital for healthy relationships. The third key is, again, going back to letting go of that guilt. We're remembering that asserting our needs is not selfish. It is a critical step towards maintaining your well-being. It is okay to voice our needs. It is okay to assert our needs, and it is okay to explore what our needs actually are. Getting clear. So as we are thinking about transitioning into the next section, think about how navigating your inner world can actually influence your interactions with others. And I know you have lots to share here, Lori.
Well, that whole question, right? Like, how does that influence? How does your communication influence your relationship with others? And I love that you brought this in about, like, again, knowing and communicating what you want. It is that confidence, and it does instill that self-trust. And then also this bringing in the pushback again, right? The pushback, because we will receive pushback as we do this detoxing. But on the other side of that is the peace, and we are proof of that. We are experiencing that every single day as we are instilling these boundaries and communicating our boundaries. But one of the things that I've noticed as we've been moving through this is that people's nervous systems. Like my family knows what to expect. So their nervous system is regulated because there is that consistency there. I mean, in the beginning, yes, there was the choppy waters, there was all the nuances and everything else that ends up happening. But now, like they know. They like it's kind of like the rules of the house type thing, right? They know. And then this part about where you said it's okay, like it's okay to have these needs and to communicate this because again, no one can love you more than you. You are the only person that knows where you are mentally, with your mental health and your own nervous system. And this goes to the social workers, everybody, right? Social workers, parents, and children. Even the children, they are the only ones that are going to know where they're at. Our teens, all of you. And so this is a foundational piece with every aspect of our lives is coming back to who are we? How anchored are we in that? How much do we understand about ourselves? The way we're able to do that is with self-care. It is with this part about when you learn to navigate your inner world, the distractions of the outer world lose their power. And that is a beautiful thing, right? Like the
Yeah.
second that, yeah, whenever we talked about that earlier in the previous courses leading up to this number 3 was when we actually even have it in our awareness that something has power over us or that we're part of an experiment or something like that, and algorithms and all of that, it's like, oh my gosh, when we all of a sudden see that for what it is, it completely loses their power. But it's because we have this strong spine and open heart because we're anchored in who we are. We have this sovereignty of who we are. And so now we're able to navigate our inner world, which is a beautiful place to be. And that, I mean, that really says everything to me.
It, it really does. It says everything. And, by us getting to a place where we are able to navigate our inner world, it gives permission for others to do the same, to get curious and to find out, where are the distractions? Where are the energy leaks? Where are we losing our power? Um, it's really powerful. And then from that place, we're able to recognize the boundaries, be consistent, and let go of the guilt because we're clear. We know how to navigate the inner landscape.
And honestly, with the work that we do, one of my favorite, I mean, it's always amazing to see a child or an adolescent or a teen to get that, especially the teens, because they're so conditioned to be on social media. And so whenever you see them actually put down the digital devices and they start to get in, like connect into here and they start discovering their gifts. I mean, this is when they start doing like this prodigy stuff, right? They're out there learning the musical instruments. They're out there in the plays. They're discovering their own authentic gifts. And whenever you see them, like that has no power over them or how they think of themselves, their self-esteem, their confidence, any of that, like the self-judgment goes away. And talk about powerful generations coming up into this world. Like those are the generations that I want to lead this world, and that just, I mean, I can't even put words to it actually whenever I see that happen.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And it really does come with the awareness first. It comes with the trust in self and then the awareness and the inner guidance to be able to even break away from the norm. Um, that takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of willpower uh, because there is a lot of judgment in those spaces as well. So when they can put it down and say, hey, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to live my authentic my authentic life. I'm going to express my authentic self and pursue those desires and those passions. And that is where all of the change is created.
And then you see the adults that they turn into, and it's
Hmm.
like, wow.
Yeah, and I want to say too, just because I again, I mentioned this in a previous presentation, but I do have a daughter, my son as well, but he's younger. But my daughter was born in the very beginning of, she was born in 2009, so she has technically grown up with technology, even though um, I definitely was a parent who set limits around that, especially when she was younger. But what I'll say is that I noticed that within her friend group, they are becoming more aware of the mental health crisis that we're talking about, and they are becoming more aware of their digital habits. And I don't know if this is like across the board. I just know this is what I'm noticing within her and her friend group. And they will actually, have conversations about it. And again, going back to even recognizing the boundaries, you know, I don't know if it's just me, but my daughter in the past has said, Mom, put down your phone. If we're trying to have a conversation, and now that's something that's really in my awareness, because that made me sad that at any point in time she needed to say, Hey, Mom, can you put down your phone? We're talking. And so that's something I'm really conscious of when it comes to my son, especially. And we call each other out on it. You know, I'm actually not going to have a conversation with anyone if they're looking at their phone at this point, because the awareness is there, you know?
That's same with me. In fact, what I say is, I'll come back when you're done with what you're doing. That's what
Yeah.
because even just having the awareness, right? Like, and noticing that, oh, I might be interrupting something that they're actually doing. They could be working from their phone. They could be, I mean, who knows, right? And so I'll always say, hey, just let me know when you're done there. I have something I wanted to share with you, or something like that. And that has even been huge, right? It's that respect again and that communication.
Yeah. And just, just knowing, because when you are observing, you're being that observer, right? Um, and you're identifying the challenges. When you are speaking to someone and they are looking at the phone, they are not present and they are not hearing you. So again, going back to the kids, something that I will say is, are you with me? Can you hear me? No, put the phone down. If we're going to talk, it's going to be without the device.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I remember my mom doing that with me. And I mean, I didn't grow up with the internet, but I grew up with TV. And I
Right.
remember when Rudolph from, how like they had the holiday shows that would come on all the time. So this is before you could stream or record or anything like that. But as a kid, I would be so tuned into Rudolph for whatever reason I would every single year. And my mom would literally have to get in front of me and say, Lori, can I talk to you over, dinner is ready or whatever. And so sometimes this might be the things, like, just remember how you were as a kid too, and really just putting yourself in those shoes. What worked for you? Like, really, um, I like that we're talking about this because there is all the nuance, and it is awesome because start to tap into that creativity too,
Hmm.
instead of just yelling or something like that, or come on, I need your attention, or anything like that. It's like really just how, oh, I'd love to hear the comments from anybody too. I would love to hear any of the ideas that you come up with, to be able to even break that focus, like, right? Break the focus and get the attention. And then how do you communicate? So good. Are you ready to move on to the next one?
Hmm.
Okay.
So next we are going to tackle how to practice building trust and boundaries. So as we transition to our next topic, let's focus on building trust and boundaries. First, I invite you to think about one specific area in your life where you can find it challenging to set boundaries, which is just what we were sort of talking about. Next, we're going to practice actually expressing that boundary using the principles of nonviolent communication that we discussed earlier. And then this is going to be an opportunity to share your feelings and needs clearly without assigning blame. And then finally, we want to reflect on how setting those boundaries could contribute to your overall well-being. We want to keep in mind the importance of considering all of the positive outcomes. So again, we're leaning away from placing blame and focusing on what are the positive outcomes and what can that do for us? What are the possibilities? And then just remembering again that establishing boundaries is a step in the direction of nurturing trust in our relationships and also enhancing our self-care. So just to reiterate what is on the slides here, we're going to identify the area where boundaries feel challenging. We're going to practice expressing a boundary using nonviolent communication. And then we're going to reflect on how setting this boundary could improve your well-being. And it's all you, Lori.
Okay. All right. So identifying the one area where it can feel challenging, that can be extremely overwhelming for everyone. So just simplify. We are simplifying this process. We're just asking you to identify just one. Okay. So just one area. And then with this practicing expressing the boundary using nonviolent communication, what I have found to be very helpful, and same with the people that I work with, is when you're able to communicate by giving a lot of time. So, depending on the communication style and the decision style of your family or who it is that you're doing this with, some people, I know, especially in the beginning, giving a few days time. Hey, we're going to be implementing that instead of being so abrupt and be like, boom, we're implementing, we're detoxing at the dinner table or whatever. It's like start to give a few days of saying this is, and even having them as your family as part of the conversation and even part of the idea, putting ideas and stuff out there. Because when people are actually part of all of this, and they're part of the vision, because there could be some things that you as a parent might be doing that the kids are like, Mom, Dad, gosh, we'd really love it if you didn't do this, right? Or if you could really hear us when this is whatever, right? This is when you're talking about, Sarah Elizabeth, like calling each other out in a way, right? Of just being like, there's things that you may not know that you're unaware of, like texting while driving. I mean, that's something that drives my son up the wall. And I didn't even realize I was doing it until he said it. And it was because he would get nervous of my driving, right? So I stopped doing that type thing. So there was a lot here. So just depending on your family, so the nuance again, right? Depending on your family and your family's habits, but also their communication style and their decision-making style. Give them a lot of time because we all have those people in our lives that some can be on board right away and they're like, yep, and they have the discipline and they can do it. Other people are kind of like this, right? And we talk about the emotional wave, right? And so they might be on board and they're like, yep. And then all of a sudden, oh no, I don't want to do that because of X, Y, Z. And what if so-and-so is trying to get a hold of me? And then you're able to calm them down, be like, you have to really work with your family and their communication style and decision style. So I have a lot of those emotional waves in my family. I have a lot of members who have that. So for me, what I found that really works well is when I give a lot of time, I introduce the subject, like I introduce something that I'd like to start to implement. Then I ask them if they have any suggestions or what are some of the things, I try to get them involved in that. And then this is where it kind of also going back to what we said, even if there's only one of you who's doing this and is aware, one of you in the family, you can get your other people on board by doing this. And so giving that time and then repeating it over and over and over again. so that they're able to hear it. Because if they are somebody that they have to go through that emotional wave, they have to be able to feel all the emotions of what this is going to expect before they'll finally even out and then be on board. We talk about more in other courses. We talk about how to actually get that part of the nervous system to even out. And then this part on reflect on how this can improve your well-being in your life. And it does. It cuts out unnecessary drama. That is one of the things that I've noticed in my family. It cuts out the unnecessary drama. There is definitely more peace. They do have regulated nervous systems because they are starting to do the things that they love. So they really are. They're starting to just discover themselves, and there's this new energy and excitement within our home because of that. And the other part that has been the most foundational piece is that they know what to expect. And I know we keep talking about the same things over and over again, but they know what to expect. And when they know what to expect and that doesn't change, now they can kind of do this even in the beginning, but then it starts to even out and then they're on board. And then when they're on board, they're also getting their people on board, which is like their friends and everything. Like it's such a beautiful thing to witness when our children actually set the rules for their friends and we don't have to. That's
Mhm.
amazing. And the expectation, right? That it's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it's just, the way that we usually like to express that is that, like, it just creates the ripple. It creates the ripple, it creates the change that we'd like to see. Um, and, I just love even what you were talking about as far as having the conversation, giving some time. I definitely utilize that technique as well. But also, when we're having the conversation, make it an actual conversation that where we're practicing using nonviolent communication. We are taking their thoughts and considerations taking their thoughts into consideration. And we're coming up with something together. It's not just, again, do what I say just because I'm saying do it. Like, make it fun, make it lighthearted, make it even a little bit of a joke, so that again we're not going back to that judgment and blame. And it just continues to ripple out. Like, when you learn to approach things from that lighthearted place, and I know this is a conversation Lori and I have been having recently, is it just completely changes the dynamic of the conversation.
Yep, it totally does. We talk about it quite a bit in the previous courses of that led up to this of just, I mean, when you can bring that fun in, especially when it comes to kids,
Mhm.
like they have to see what's on the other side. It has to be fun for them. And it doesn't have to be so daunting. So yeah, love this.
Okay, moving on. So just a little bit of tailored guidance here, specific to social workers, parents, and children. So let's consider how we can apply these concepts of boundaries and nonviolent communication in different contexts. So for social workers, a suggestion would be to facilitate workshops which can empower others to learn about boundary setting and using nonviolent communication techniques. This is a step in creating a safe environment for both clients and professionals, as well, as any of the children. Clearly, they would be clients, but it creates safety. Um, for parents, modeling healthy boundaries is key. We've talked about that. By practicing nonviolent communication with the children, you not only teach them how to express their needs, but also set a standard for respectful interactions. And then lastly, for children, just teaching simple phrases can be a game changer. It allows them to communicate their needs respectfully while fostering a sense of confidence and assertiveness from a young age. And again, it definitely helps if we have this knowledge, this understanding, and this awareness when the children are young. It can definitely be more challenging as they are getting older and the conditioning is already present. Um, there's already been breaches in trust. They already don't feel safe for whatever reason. It's definitely easier if we're establishing it at a young age, but these seeds can be planted at any age, even for adults. Not having any of this understanding or any of this awareness, those seeds can be planted, and with practice, it can be implemented, and we can see that change again.
I mean, I thought in myself, just as we've been doing this experiment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'll just go ahead and again reiterate for social workers, we want to facilitate the workshops to teach boundary setting and nonviolent communication. For parents, we're going to model the healthy boundaries and practice the nonviolent communication. And then for children, just teach the simple phrases to communicate needs respectfully. And that just goes back to what we were sharing, the 4 steps earlier around observing without judgment, expressing your feelings openly, identifying the needs, and then making the request. Mm-hmm. And then Lori?
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much for explaining this tailored guidance. I love, I mean, as for social workers and those of us who are in this space, um, I think it's really big. Kind of going back to that very first quote that we shared with you around body language, and how important that is for our children to experiment with and to know, right? To pick up on those social cues and everything, and those emojis of how the emojis are kind of taking the place of that. So I love this part about like, let's start to facilitate workshops in this way. Like, let's make it fun. It's interactive, physical engagement. It's mimicking each other's body language and just role playing and different things like that. It's when we start to actually do this, like taking it offline and actually doing it in physical spaces, I feel is pretty huge. It's something that hasn't been done for a little. I mean, it's starting to make a comeback, I feel, at least at the time of this recording. I know there's a lot of you out there that are doing this, but I think it's really starting to bring the kids back into actually experiencing it, because whenever the kids are experiencing this is when they remember it. They remember how they feel, right? Again, it's that embodiment of all of it. So I feel like one of the very first things here to really teach, if you have someone, is start to do this mimicking of the body language and everything else. This other part here about the parents and modeling the healthy boundaries. I mean, yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard at first, and it's going to be hard, but like, when you have these experiences, they stick. And so if you're able to create these experiences with your kids and with your families, like, this is when it sticks. In fact, we implemented like that Friday evenings. We dinner and a movie usually is what happens. And there's no phones, there's no devices. And it's been so cool to actually see my family talking about that and how that has actually implemented. And I never know until I hear them telling somebody else. So it's been really cool because they're talking about how it made them feel. And that is awesome whenever we're able to do that. So just stick with it. It's modeling these healthy boundaries and practicing the nonviolent communication. And then for our children, it really comes back to basics. It really does. I mean, we laid out, or Sarah Elizabeth laid out so beautifully, that 4-step process, but also it really just comes back to what I mean, the golden rule, right? Of treating others how you want to be treated. and having that strong spine, like really getting clear in who you are and and know the boundaries that need to be set, and then enforcing those boundaries, like setting them and not wavering from them. Obviously, nuances are there, but not wavering, and having that strong spine and that open heart, communicating in that way with your family. This is what develops that confidence. This is what develops that self-trust. And also, like, you can do hard things. It's going back to that part in the lesson where we talked about remembering your successes. Like, you can do hard things, and you can do this too, because I know every time we even talk about digital detox with children, for the children, the parents are just like, no, you have no idea what you're asking. And it's like, yes, we get it. Yes, we get it. We get it. And again, just remembering, like, why are you doing this? What is on the other side of this? Creating a new reference point if you don't have one, because again, we have to remember, we talked about this a lot in the very first presentation. Our children do not have a reference point for what life was like before these devices. And so it is creating a new reference point for them. And so it's really just talking to them a lot about their needs, their desires. What do they want? And just reminding them of that, and reminding them that they can do hard things too. So this is so good. So good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Are we ready to move on to next steps, areas of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment? So as we're thinking about how building self-trust and setting boundaries has influenced your life, our lives, I'd love for us to consider the positive changes that you've experienced, whether it's a greater clarity in your relationships or it's an improved sense of well-being. And here we'd just like to let you know that as we come to the end of this presentation, in our next presentation, we will be delving into identifying the specific areas of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment relative to digital detox. And this exploration is intended to help us understand where we can implement changes for a more fulfilling life. So we would love for you to embark on these next steps together. So again, we're just reflecting upon how building the self-trust and boundaries has impacted our lives, and then exploring and identifying areas of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment within our next presentation, which will be 4 out of 11. And I think that's all I have here.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, so I feel that our well-being is a direct reflection of how well we're setting our boundaries. So I love this part about just reflect on this. And then I'm excited to move into the next areas of dissatisfaction and unfulfillment, because anytime that we feel pressure in our lives, or we feel irritation or frustration, that is also like when it shines a spotlight on where we are dissatisfied or unfulfilled in our lives. So we're very excited to move into this next presentation of this course or this program.
Yes, me too.
Okay. All right. So thank you for joining us. You are always welcome to join our next live webinar or event, or the next course if you are getting this as a one-off. This is, at the time of recording, part 3 out of an 11-part series. So you're always able to join our next live webinar or event. For more information, you can visit or register at following. So phone number 435-705-1136, Website, www.redlotuslife.com. Email address, hello@redlotuslife.com. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear. This is exciting. There's so many things here with this digital detox program that you can get creative with. And if you saw the very first presentation, that's exactly what we talked about. It sparks when we start to detox from our devices, it sparks creativity like no other. So I know, like we know, that you have so many ideas that you're probably starting to go, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and I can do this. So please reach out to us. Let us know, how are you implementing the ideas and the strategies in this program? We would love to hear. So if you are interested, yes, drop us a line.
Yes, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we'll see you next time. Okay, bye.